She woke up before sunrise, the cold morning air brushing against her face as she got ready for another long day. She lived in a small, cramped apartment that barely had enough space for her to stretch out. Every morning, she tried to shake off the heavy feeling of worry that seemed to follow her everywhere. Bills were piling up, rent was due, and her job barely paid enough to cover her basic needs. Despite the exhaustion, she forced herself to put on a smile and head to the cafe where she worked. The walk there was long, but it gave her a few moments of peace, time to gather her thoughts and brace herself for the day ahead. When she arrived, the familiar smell of coffee and baked goods greeted her, but it did little to lift her spirits. She had worked here for a few years, and while she enjoyed interacting with customers, the constant pressure from her manager and the never-ending tasks made every day feel heavier than the last. As she clocked in, she noticed the usual tension in the air. Other employees were moving quickly, trying to keep up with the morning rush of customers who were already impatient for their coffee and breakfast. She took a deep breath and stepped behind the counter, trying to steady her nerves. The first customers of the day arrived almost immediately. Some were kind and polite, greeting her with a smile or a simple good morning. But others were demanding and rude, complaining about minor mistakes or delays. She did her best to handle each situation with patience, even though it drained her energy. Her manager walked by, eyes sharp and critical. He didn't speak much, but his presence was intimidating. Any small slip-up was met with a disapproving glance or a sharp word. Today, he seemed particularly tense, and she felt his eyes on her every move. She tried to stay focused, moving quickly to take orders, make drinks, and serve food. Her hands ached from the constant work, and her feet throbbed from standing for hours on end. But she didn't complain. She couldn't afford to. Throughout the morning, the cafe was busy. Orders kept coming in, and she moved as fast as she could, trying to keep up. She spilled a little coffee once, and a customer complained loudly. Her manager noticed immediately, coming over with a frown. "Be more careful," he said, his voice low but sharp. She apologized quickly, feeling a knot of anxiety form in her stomach. She knew she was doing her best, but it never seemed to be enough. By midday, she was exhausted. Her hair was damp with sweat, and her apron was stained from the constant rush of drinks and food. She took a moment to breathe, leaning against the counter for just a second. She looked around at the other employees, most of them young and energetic, moving with ease. She admired their energy, wishing she could feel the same, but the weight of her responsibilities pressed heavily on her. Lunch came and went in a blur. She didn't have time to sit down or eat properly. A quick snack in the back room was all she could manage before the next wave of customers arrived. Some days felt endless, each hour blending into the next with no break. She had dreams of doing more, of living a life that didn't feel like survival every single day. But for now, this cafe was her reality. In the afternoon, things seemed to get worse. A group of loud customers complained about their order, pointing out every small mistake. She apologized, trying to calm them down, but their frustration only seemed to grow. Her manager appeared again, this time more agitated, and she felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. He criticized her for something she hadn't even realized she did wrong, and her heart sank. She had been trying so hard, but it seemed like nothing she did was enough. Her mind wandered for a brief moment, thinking about how unfair life felt. She thought about the apartment she could barely afford, the bills that kept stacking up, and the dreams she had pushed aside to make it through each day. She remembered the nights she stayed up worrying about money, wondering how she would pay for rent, groceries, or even small treats for herself. Life had become a series of struggles, each day blending into the next, with little relief. Despite all this, she kept going. She reminded herself that she had to keep working, that she couldn't give up. The cafe was her job, and without it, she would have nothing. She tried to focus on the small victories. A customer who smiled, a kind word from a coworker, a brief moment of calm in the chaos. These small moments were what kept her going, even when the day felt impossible. As the afternoon wore on, the pace never let up. Orders kept coming, customers kept complaining, and her manager continued to watch her every move. She felt like she was walking on a tightrope, one mistake away from disaster. Her muscles ached, her mind was tired, but she kept pushing herself, determined to get through the day. Finally, the end of her shift approached. She was drained, her body heavy with exhaustion. She cleaned her station one last time, washed her hands, and hung up her apron. As she clocked out, she felt a mixture of relief and dread. Relief that the day was over, dread that tomorrow would bring the same challenges. She walked out of the cafe into the cool evening air, taking a deep breath, trying to shake off the weight of the day. She thought about the future, about how much she wanted things to be different. She wanted a life where she wasn't constantly struggling, where she could feel safe and secure, where she could dream without fear. But for now, she had to keep going, keep working, and keep hoping that one day, things would change. She knew that life was hard, but she also knew that she was strong enough to face it, one day at a time. The next morning, she felt the weight of yesterday's struggles still pressing down on her. She had managed to get a few hours of sleep, but her mind was restless. Thoughts of bills, unpaid rent, and the uncertain future crowded her head. She tried to push them aside as she got ready for the day, knowing she had to find some way to move forward, even if she wasn't sure how. She decided to take a walk to clear her mind, heading toward the small shopping area near her apartment. It was one of the few places where she could lose herself for a little while, just watching people go about their lives, hearing the distant sounds of laughter and conversation. The streets were lively, filled with the usual mix of pedestrians, shopkeepers, and the occasional street performer. She felt a small sense of relief as she wandered through the crowds, trying to focus on the present instead of worrying about the past or the future. Her eyes caught the display of a small boutique that had recently opened. The window was filled with beautiful jewelry, delicate necklaces, and sparkling pendants that glimmered in the sunlight. She hesitated at the entrance, unsure if she could even afford to go inside, but curiosity and a need to see something beautiful pushed her forward. Stepping into the boutique, she was immediately greeted by the warm lighting and the quiet, calming atmosphere. The scent of polished wood and subtle fragrances made her feel calm, almost as if she had entered a different world. As she moved through the store, her fingers lightly brushed against the necklaces on display. She admired their intricate designs, imagining how they would look on someone she cared about. Her thoughts drifted to her niece, a bright and cheerful little girl who always seemed to find joy in the smallest things. She wished she could buy her something special, a token of love that would make her smile, even if just for a moment. While she was admiring a small silver pendant with a delicate chain, a sudden movement caught her attention. A tall man had entered the boutique, his presence immediately commanding the room without him saying a word. He was dressed impeccably, exuding confidence and calm, and there was an intensity in his eyes that made her pause. As he moved closer, he seemed to glance at the items on display, but then his gaze shifted and landed on the pendant she had been admiring. Something in his expression made her uneasy yet curious. His eyes widened slightly, and he froze in place, staring at the pendant she was holding. She felt a strange sense of tension, as if the air between them had changed. He looked at her, then back at the pendant, and back at her again, as if he were trying to process something important. She didn't understand what was happening, but the way he looked at her made her heart beat faster. The man approached slowly, his steps deliberate, and finally spoke. "That pendant," he said softly, almost as if he were whispering to himself. She looked down at it, tracing the small, intricate details that had first drawn her to it. "It belonged to my grandmother," she replied, her voice calm but tinged with curiosity. "It's very special to me." He seemed stunned by her words, his eyes reflecting a mix of surprise and disbelief. He asked her where she had gotten it, and she explained that it had been passed down through her family, a precious heirloom she never took off. He listened intently, nodding occasionally, but his focus never wavered from the pendant itself. There was something in the way he observed it, a familiarity that made her even more curious. She noticed that he was examining the gemstones closely, his eyes narrowing as if trying to remember something from his past. He asked if he could take a closer look, and she hesitated for a moment before carefully handing it to him. He held it gently, turning it in the light, examining every facet as though it held a secret he had been searching for his entire life. She watched him, sensing the importance of this moment, and a strange sense of connection began to form between them. He finally looked up at her, his expression a mixture of awe and recognition. He explained that the pendant was part of a rare collection he had been studying, something he had been searching for in various locations for years. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. Something she had worn every day, something that had been a part of her family for generations, was now the focus of a wealthy man's attention. She felt a strange mix of pride, disbelief, and nervous excitement. They continued talking, and she told him stories about her family, about the pendant's history, and how much it meant to her. He listened carefully, genuinely interested, and occasionally asked questions that showed he understood its value beyond the material. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, as if someone truly cared about her story, her life, and the small details that made her who she was. The conversation lasted for what felt like hours, though in reality, it was probably only a few minutes. She felt a strange comfort in his presence, a sense that something unexpected and important was happening. He complimented her honesty and the way she cherished the pendant, saying that it was rare to find someone who truly appreciated something so precious. She blushed slightly, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the boutique's heating. As he prepared to leave, he asked if she would consider meeting him again to discuss the pendant further, perhaps even to help him with his collection. She was taken aback, unsure what to say, but the sincerity in his eyes made her nod. He smiled, handing the pendant back to her carefully, and left the boutique, leaving her with a sense of wonder and disbelief. She held the pendant tightly, her fingers tracing the familiar shape, feeling a connection to something much bigger than herself. Walking back to her apartment, she replayed the encounter in her mind, unable to shake the feeling that her life had just shifted in a way she could never have imagined. She thought about the possibility of new opportunities, about stepping out of the daily grind that had consumed her for so long. The pendant, which had always been a private treasure, had now become the bridge to something extraordinary, something that might finally change her circumstances. That evening, she sat by her window, looking out at the city lights, her mind buzzing with thoughts of what could come next. She thought about the man, the pendant, and the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. She realized that even in the hardest times, life had a way of surprising you, of opening doors when you least expect it. She held the pendant close, feeling both grounded and hopeful, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. The following morning, she woke with a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. Last night's encounter kept replaying in her mind. She could hardly believe what had happened. A stranger, a wealthy man, had shown interest in something she had always kept private, something that was close to her heart. She knew her life was still the same on the outside, but something inside her had shifted. There was a sense of possibility she hadn't felt in years. She prepared for her day slowly, carefully, trying to calm the fluttering in her chest. The pendant lay on her dresser, glinting softly in the morning light. She picked it up, feeling the familiar weight and texture, and for a moment, she imagined what might come next. The thought made her both anxious and hopeful. She wondered if the man would reach out, if he would remember her story, and what it could mean for her future. Hours later, she received a call from the boutique. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, but there was a note of warmth in it. The man wanted to meet her at a quiet cafe, somewhere private, to discuss the pendant in more detail. She felt her heart skip a beat. She had never experienced anything like this before. Every instinct told her to be cautious, but her curiosity and hope outweighed her fear. When she arrived at the cafe, she spotted him sitting at a corner table, quietly observing the room. He stood as she approached, offering a kind smile that immediately put her at ease. She felt nervous, yet something about his demeanor made her feel safe. They greeted each other politely, and for a few moments, they just sat, sipping their drinks, letting the quiet tension pass. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but deliberate. He told her how rare it was to find someone who truly valued something for its meaning rather than its material worth. He explained that the pendant she wore was part of a historical collection he had been researching for years, something that had been lost to time and was now incredibly rare. She listened, fascinated, feeling a mixture of pride and disbelief. The pendant she had worn every day, the one she thought of as a small family treasure, was of significant importance to someone else as well. He asked her about her life, gently probing into her experiences and struggles. She told him about her job at the cafe, the long hours, the constant worry about bills, and the simple moments that brought her joy. He listened with genuine interest, nodding occasionally, asking questions that showed he cared about her as a person, not just the pendant. She was struck by how rare it was to be truly seen and heard, and she felt a sense of trust forming. The conversation soon turned to the possibility of her helping him with his collection. He explained that he needed someone honest, diligent, and dependable, someone who could manage and care for valuable items. He didn't expect her to have any special experience, just a willingness to learn and dedication. She felt a mix of excitement and doubt. This was far beyond anything she had imagined for herself, but the sincerity in his voice made it feel real. He described the kind of work she could do, organizing the collection, cataloging items, and helping with research. He even mentioned occasional trips to auctions and historical sites, opportunities to learn from experts and expand her knowledge. She listened, amazed at the possibilities. For the first time, she could imagine a life beyond the cafe, beyond the daily grind, a life that offered growth, learning, and stability. As they talked, he shared stories of the items in his collection, each with its own history and significance. He spoke with passion and reverence, showing her how much he valued preserving these pieces of history. She felt inspired, realizing that this could be more than just a job. It could be a chance to be part of something meaningful, something that mattered. She could help protect and care for treasures that told stories from the past. He then explained that he would need some time to make arrangements and ensure everything was in order before she could start. He asked if she would be willing to meet him again to finalize the details and begin her new role. She nodded, feeling a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. The idea of change was daunting, but it also felt like a lifeline, a chance to step into a new chapter of her life. Before leaving, he gave her a small notebook, asking her to write down any thoughts, questions, or ideas about the pendant and the collection. He said it would help them communicate better and ensure she felt comfortable with everything. She took it carefully, feeling the weight of responsibility and opportunity. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot. She realized that he respected her input and valued her perspective, something she hadn't experienced before. Walking home, she couldn't stop thinking about the meeting. Every step was filled with a sense of anticipation. She imagined herself working with him, learning new skills, seeing places she had only dreamed of, and being part of something significant. She felt hope growing inside her, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to experience in a long time. For the first time in years, she felt like her life could change in ways she had only imagined in her dreams. That night, she carefully placed the pendant back on her dresser, next to the notebook. She felt a sense of connection, not just to the pendant, but to the possibilities it represented. She reflected on how one small item, something she had taken for granted, had opened a door to a world she never knew existed. She realized that life had a way of surprising you, that even in the darkest moments, unexpected opportunities could appear. She lay in bed, unable to sleep, her mind racing with ideas and plans. She thought about the responsibilities she would have, the skills she needed to learn, and the changes that were coming. But instead of fear, she felt determination. She knew this could be the chance she had been waiting for, the moment that could transform her life from struggle to possibility. She closed her eyes, holding on to that hope, ready to face whatever came next with courage and a newfound sense of purpose. The next morning brought a nervous excitement she hadn't felt in years. She woke early, careful not to wake the neighbors, and made herself a small breakfast, her mind racing with thoughts of what was to come. Today, she was meeting the man again, and she knew this could mark a turning point in her life. She felt a mix of hope and fear, the kind that made her heart beat faster with anticipation. She dressed carefully, choosing simple but neat clothes that would give a good impression. She wanted to appear capable, responsible, and trustworthy. The pendant rested around her neck, glinting softly in the morning light. She touched it gently, feeling comforted by its familiar weight. This small piece of jewelry had already changed her life, and she couldn't help but feel it would continue to guide her through this next chapter. When she arrived at the meeting spot, the man was already there, seated at a quiet table in the back of the cafe. He stood as she approached, offering a warm smile that made her nerves settle slightly. They exchanged greetings, and he gestured for her to sit. For a few moments, they just looked at each other, letting the quiet settle around them. Then he began to speak, his tone calm but serious. He explained that he had reviewed the pendant and its history carefully. He shared details about its significance and why it was so rare, explaining that he had spent years tracking similar items, but none had matched this one. He told her that he valued the pendant not just for its monetary worth, but for the story it carried, the generations it represented, and the care she had shown by keeping it safe. She listened, feeling proud and amazed that something so personal to her could hold such importance to someone else. He then shifted the conversation to the possibility of her joining him in a professional capacity. He needed someone who could assist with his collection, someone diligent, trustworthy, and eager to learn. He emphasized that this wasn't a traditional job. It would involve responsibility, attention to detail, and a willingness to grow. She felt her pulse quicken. The opportunity sounded incredible, almost unreal, but he spoke with such sincerity that she knew it was genuine. He outlined what the role would entail. She would be responsible for organizing, cataloging, and maintaining parts of his collection. Occasionally, she might assist with research, attend auctions, or accompany him to historical sites to study artifacts. He stressed that training and guidance would be provided, and he was looking for someone who was committed to learning and growing with the role. She felt both excited and nervous. This was far beyond anything she had imagined for herself, but the possibilities were thrilling. As they spoke, he asked about her experiences, what skills she might bring, and how she approached responsibility. She shared her background, her work ethic, and the challenges she had faced while working at the cafe. She told him about managing stress, dealing with difficult situations, and the determination she had to keep going despite obstacles. He listened intently, nodding and occasionally offering encouragement. It became clear that he valued not just her willingness to learn, but the resilience and character she had developed over time. They discussed practical details next, work schedule, expectations, and the ways she would be supported in her new role. He explained that he wanted this transition to be smooth and that he would help her adapt to the new responsibilities. She felt reassured by his thoughtfulness and professionalism, realizing that he genuinely cared about her well-being and success. It was a stark contrast to the harshness she had experienced in her previous job, and it made her hopeful for what lay ahead. Throughout the conversation, they returned several times to the pendant itself. He asked her questions about its history, the way it had been cared for, and the memories attached to it. She shared stories about her family, the moments when the pendant had been a source of comfort, and the significance it held in her life. He listened, fascinated, and sometimes paused, clearly moved by her words. She felt a sense of connection, as if they were sharing something sacred, and it made the meeting feel deeply personal. He then proposed a trial period, a way for her to begin learning and contributing without overwhelming pressure. He wanted her to get accustomed to the work, to understand the responsibilities, and to see if it was a good fit for both of them. She felt relieved and grateful. It was a thoughtful approach, giving her time to adjust and learn without fear of failure. She agreed eagerly, excited to begin this new chapter and determined to give it her all. Before leaving, he handed her a small set of materials to study, including guides on handling artifacts, cataloging methods, and notes about the collection. He encouraged her to ask questions, to take notes, and to share her observations. She accepted them with care, feeling a mix of responsibility and pride. This was not just a job. It was an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to be part of something meaningful. Walking home, she felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. The weight of financial stress and daily struggle was still there, but now it was accompanied by hope and purpose. She imagined herself learning new skills, contributing to the preservation of valuable history, and stepping into a life that offered stability and growth. The pendant felt like a symbol of this new path, a reminder that small things could lead to incredible change. That evening, she carefully organized the materials, making notes and reviewing what she had learned. She thought about the future, about the work she would do, and the experiences she would have. She felt ready, determined, and excited. For the first time in a long time, she felt that life could be more than just getting by. It could be meaningful, fulfilling, and full of possibilities. As she lay in bed, she held the pendant close and reflected on how far she had come. From the struggles of the cafe to this new opportunity, her life had already begun to shift in ways she hadn't imagined. She knew challenges would come, but she felt equipped to face them. She closed her eyes with a sense of gratitude, hope, and anticipation, ready for the journey that lay ahead, and eager to embrace the changes that were about to transform her life completely. The following days passed in a blur of anticipation and preparation. She spent every free moment studying the materials he had given her, learning about the careful handling of valuable items, cataloging methods, and the history behind the collection. Each page she read brought new excitement and wonder, opening her eyes to a world she had never imagined. She felt herself growing more confident and capable with each passing day, eager to begin this new chapter. Finally, the day arrived when she would officially start working with him. She dressed carefully, choosing practical but neat clothes, and made sure the pendant was secure around her neck. It had become a symbol of this new beginning, a reminder of how a single moment could change the course of a life. As she walked to their meeting spot, she felt a mixture of excitement, nervousness, and determination. This was her chance to step into something bigger, and she was ready to embrace it fully. When she arrived, he greeted her warmly, his smile reassuring. He led her to a quiet, sunlit room filled with shelves and display cases containing artifacts and rare items. The space smelled faintly of polished wood and old paper, a comforting and inspiring aroma. She felt a thrill as she looked around, realizing that she was about to become a part of this world, entrusted with the care and preservation of these treasures. He began by showing her how to handle each item carefully, explaining the importance of respect, attention to detail, and patience. She listened intently, absorbing every word, and tried to mirror his careful movements. He demonstrated cataloging techniques, ways to clean and store items, and methods to document the history behind each piece. She felt a sense of pride in learning these skills, recognizing that she was building expertise and gaining knowledge that could serve her for a lifetime. As the day progressed, he invited her to assist in organizing a small portion of the collection. She handled the items with care, placing them in designated areas, documenting their details, and noting any peculiarities or special features. He observed her closely, offering guidance and encouragement, and she felt a growing sense of confidence. She realized that her hard work and dedication were paying off, and she could contribute meaningfully to something important. Throughout the day, they shared stories and insights about the collection. He explained the origins of certain items, their historical significance, and the ways they had been preserved over time. She listened with fascination, absorbing the history and learning to appreciate the value of each artifact beyond its appearance. She felt inspired, understanding that her work was helping to protect and honor these pieces of the past, giving them a chance to be remembered and appreciated. He also asked about her own thoughts and ideas, encouraging her to offer suggestions and observations. She found herself thinking critically, noticing details she might have overlooked before, and feeling proud when he acknowledged her insights. This collaboration made her feel valued, not just as an assistant, but as a partner in preserving history. She realized that her voice and perspective mattered, and that her contributions could make a real difference. As the days turned into weeks, she became more comfortable and skilled in her role. She learned how to research items, write detailed descriptions, and even prepare small presentations for private viewings. She traveled occasionally to attend auctions and historical sites, gaining hands-on experience and expanding her knowledge. Each experience built her confidence and expertise, and she felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment she had never known before. She also noticed changes within herself. The constant worry and stress that had once dominated her life began to fade. She felt more confident, capable, and hopeful about the future. Her days were no longer consumed by struggle and survival. Instead, they were filled with learning, growth, and meaningful work. She realized that opportunity and perseverance had brought her to this point, and she felt grateful for the twists of fate that had led her here. The man continued to mentor and guide her, offering advice, encouragement, and wisdom. He recognized her dedication and resilience, praising her for the care she showed and the growth she had achieved. Their relationship became one of mutual respect and trust, built on shared purpose and commitment to preserving the collection. She felt fortunate to have found someone who valued her abilities and saw potential where she had once only seen limitations. One afternoon, as they were reviewing a particularly rare and delicate item, he paused and smiled. He told her how impressed he was with her progress and how proud he felt to see her embrace this new path. She felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of pride and gratitude. She realized that her life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined just a few months ago. The struggles, the long hours, and the uncertainty had led her to this moment, and she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the difficult days at the cafe, the worries about bills and survival, to the chance encounter with the pendant, her life had shifted dramatically. She recognized that perseverance, openness to opportunity, and the courage to embrace change had played a crucial role. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that even in the darkest times, unexpected opportunities could appear. As the weeks continued, she became an integral part of the collection's care. She developed a routine, balancing meticulous work with moments of curiosity and exploration. She learned to appreciate the stories behind each item, the history they represented, and the responsibility of preserving them for future generations. Her life had changed from one of survival to one of meaning, and she embraced it fully. In her free moments, she thought about the pendant that had started it all. It had been a small piece of jewelry, a family heirloom, yet it had opened the door to a completely new life. She felt a sense of wonder and gratitude, realizing that sometimes the smallest things could lead to the biggest changes. She wore it proudly, a symbol of her journey, resilience, and the opportunities that had come into her life. She also thought about the lessons she had learned. To remain patient, to value hard work, to appreciate the small moments, and to stay open to possibilities. Life had tested her, but it had also rewarded her in ways she had never anticipated. She felt stronger, wiser, and ready to continue embracing the future, confident that she could face any challenge that came her way. One evening, as she sat by the window, looking out at the city lights, she felt a sense of peace. Her life had changed, not just in circumstances, but in perspective. She had learned to value herself, to trust in her abilities, and to see the potential for growth and happiness even in unexpected places. She held the pendant close, feeling the connection to her past, her family, and the journey that had brought her here. She realized that life was full of surprises, and sometimes the smallest moments could lead to the most extraordinary transformations. Her story had gone from struggle and uncertainty to opportunity and hope. She had moved from a life of daily survival to one filled with purpose, learning, and meaningful work. The journey was not easy, but it had been worth every challenge. She smiled, knowing that she had embraced change, trusted in herself, and allowed life to lead her to a place of growth and fulfillment. And as she looked toward the future, she felt ready to continue this journey, knowing that her life had been forever transformed.